Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today we'll be discussing the history of the British Ministry of Magic. Of course, there are a lot of things that took place there throughout the Harry Potter series, but today we'll be focusing on what happened prior to our dear boy Harry showing up on the wizarding scene. So without further ado, let's get started, shall we? What is the Ministry of Magic? Formed in 1707, the British Ministry of Magic is the main governing body of the magical community of the United Kingdom and Ireland. It was created to preserve magical law within Great Britain and represent these countries to the larger wizarding world. Its formation came as a direct result of the previously created Wizards' Council. Prior to 1707, the Wizards' Council was the longest-serving, though not the only, body to govern the magical community in Britain. After the imposition of the International Statute of Secrecy in 1692, however, the wizarding community needed a more highly structured, organized, and more complex governing structure than they had hitherto used to support, regulate, and communicate with a community in hiding. This, of course, led to what is now known as the Ministry of Magic. Employees of the ministry are largely unelected, with the exception of the minister, who is voted in by Great Britain's wizarding community. As seen in the Fantastic Beasts films, many other countries in the wizarding world have their own ministries of magic, including France, Germany, and Bulgaria. The United States also has a magical governing body, but as we learned in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, their government is called the Magical Congress of the United States of America, or MACUSA. The location of the ministry and how to access it. The headquarters for the British Ministry of Magic is located well beneath His Majesty's Treasury Building in central London, deep underground. Witches and wizards employed by the ministry can enter by flue network or apparition. However, during Voldemort's rise to power in the 1990s, employees of lower rank were forced to enter the ministry by way of a toilet network. Visitors to the ministry can access the building from above ground through a nearby disconnected red telephone box by dialing the word magic. Ministry events of the 18th century. As mentioned earlier, the British Ministry of Magic was founded at the beginning of the 18th century in 1707. Upon its establishment, the former chief warlock of the Wizengamot, Ulick Gamp, assumed the role of the first ever Minister for Magic in Great Britain. For those of you who may not recall, the Wizengamot is Britain's wizarding High Court of Law and Parliament, which predates the ministry. In any case, during Minister Gamp's term, he founded the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, meaning that this department has existed since the early 18th century. It was also during this time that the ministry guided its citizens through the wizarding world's adjustment to the International Statute of Secrecy of 1692. The years to follow were formative in the ministry's foundational operations. For example, in 1717, the ministry officially classified the Imperius, Cruciatus, and Avada Kedavra curses as the unforgivable curses. And then, sometime during the next Minister for Magic's term between 1718 and 1726, Azkaban was made into the official wizarding prison. This idea came from Damocles Rao, the minister at the time, who chose Azkaban as the location for the jail over the remote Hebridean island, despite much protest from the wizarding community. The next Minister for Magic, Perseus Parkinson, attempted to pass a bill which would have made it illegal to marry muggles, a law which, as we know, was enforced in the United States. However, the bill never passed in the UK, and Parkinson was voted out soon after. Sometime between 1747 and 1752, the ministry faced a goblin and werewolf rebellion, which apparently was rather mismanaged by the minister at the time, Albert Boot. Quite unfortunately, his successor, Basil Flack, did little better, as he was only in office for a mere 2 months before being removed from the position. Flack is the shortest-serving minister to ever hold the position within the ministry. Fortunately, the ministry was able to quell a number of revolts after this time during the rule of Hephaestus Gore. Gore also led the ministry's renovation of Azkaban prison's facilities. In 1782, the ministry secretly convened with the Muggle government to support the Prime Minister at the time, Lord Frederick North, with King George III's ailing mental health. Unfortunately, this connection only served to call Lord North's sanity into question for his rumoured belief in wizards. 1798 then saw the induction of the ministry's first female Minister for Magic, Artemisia Lufkin. During her 13 years in office, she established the Department of International Magical Cooperation and held the Quidditch World Cup for the first time in Britain. 19th century ministers and events. Following Lufkin's time in office, Grogan Stump served as minister from 1811 to 1819 and led the ministry's establishment of the Department of Magical Games and Sports. Then, under the rule of Ottoline Gamble, sometime between 1827 and 1835, the ministry saw the creation of multiple committees whose purpose was to investigate Muggles and their intelligence. These ministry committees uncovered that many Muggles were indeed smarter than the wizarding community had previously believed. The Department of Mysteries was almost closed down sometime between 1835 and 1841, due to the reactionary nature of the minister at the time, Rodolphus Lestrange. However, Lestrange was outed from office before he could officially instate the closure. The next sitting minister, Hortensia Millifort, introduced more legislation to the ministry between 1841 and 1849 than any other witch or wizard who's held the position. Evidently, much of what the ministry pushed through was indeed useful. However, a bit of it was rather wearisome and is likely what led to the end of Millifort's term in office. During Queen Victoria's reign of England, the monarch unknowingly befriended witch and Minister for Magic Evangeline Orpington. This friendship may have been what motivated Orpington to, allegedly, get the ministry involved in the Crimean War, an act which would have been quite illegal at the time. Then, between the years of 1858 and 1865, the ministry experienced a welcome period of peace under the governance of Minister for Magic Dugald MacPhail. Immediately following MacPhail's term, the ministry then saw its longest ever serving minister, one Faris Spouthole Spavin, who served for nearly 40 years, from 1865 to 1903. Spavin was 147 when he finally left office, at which point he had survived an assassination attempt from a centaur and attended Queen Victoria's funeral. During Spavin's term, the ministry once again faced the rise of a goblin rebellion in the late 1800s, led by a goblin named Ranrock. 20th century ministers and events. During the Muggles' First World War, the ministry passed emergency legislation which made it illegal for the wizarding community in Britain to involve themselves in the warfare. This was done under Minister Archer Evermond, who feared participating in the Great War would risk mass infractions of the International Statute of Secrecy. This legislation was largely ignored, with thousands of witches and wizards defying the law in order to help their Muggle neighbours. The ministry was then wildly unprepared to meet the growing threat of Gellert Grindelwald in the 1920s and 30s, due to the minister at the time, Hector Fawley, not taking Grindelwald's rise to power seriously. As a result, the ministry ousted Fawley to pay for his insufficient action and ineptitude. While Winston Churchill was in office, however, the ministry enjoyed a good working relationship with the Muggle Parliament, primarily thanks to the Minister for Magic between 1939 and 1948, Leonard Spencer Moon. In large contrast, about a decade later, the Minister for Magic between 1959 and 1962, Ignatius Tuft, attempted to institute a controversial Dementor breeding program. Fortunately, the ministry forced Tuft out of office before he was able to turn this terrifying program into a reality. In 1962, nearly 250 years after its formation, the Ministry of Magic inducted its first ever Muggle-born Minister for Magic, Nobby Leach. His appointment as minister caused many pure-blood ministry employees to resign in protest, and in the late 1960s, while Eugenia Jenkins was in office, the ministry dealt with a bout of pure-blood riots, which took place during Squib rights marches. Then, in response to Lord Voldemort's first rise to power in the 1970s, the ministry attempted to bolster its protection against the Dark Wizard with efforts such as placing more Dementors around Azkaban. Fortunately, Voldemort's first defeat by Harry Potter occurred in 1981, making additional security unnecessary. The Dark Lord's disappearance led to a mass celebration among the wizarding community in Britain. These celebrations caused a number of breaches against the International Statute of Secrecy, leaving the ministry to defend the actions of its citizens against the International Confederation of Wizards. Apparently, the Minister for Magic at the time, Millicent Bagnold, responded with the now infamous statement of, "I assert our inalienable right to party." It's known by many among the wizarding community that the ministry wanted Albus Dumbledore to assume the position of British Minister for Magic after Bagnold's retirement in 1990, but of course he turned it down and the job went instead to Cornelius Fudge, who was the minister in power at the start of the Harry Potter series. Much of what took place at the ministry after Harry Potter's arrival at Hogwarts you likely know well, but as a brief recap of events, in 1996 the Ministry of Magic was breached by Death Eaters and Hogwarts students alike, including Harry and his friends. This breach led to what would become known as the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, sometimes also referred to as the Battle of the Ministry of Magic. Rufus Scrimgeour was the minister to serve after Fudge was forced out of office due to his refusal to believe that Voldemort had returned. Tragically, Scrimgeour was then murdered by the Dark Lord himself while still in office. Pius Thickness then served for only a year, operating under duress of the Imperius Curse. His term has therefore been omitted from most official ministry records. Since the second defeat of Lord Voldemort, the ministry has experienced a time of relative peace, with Kingsley Shacklebolt serving until 1998 and Hermione Granger taking over in 2019. And with that, we've come to the end of another video. What did you think? Did I miss anything about the British Ministry's history? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.